Dionne, a 14-year-old black girl, lived in a vibrant and diverse neighborhood. The streets were lined with homes of various cultures, each one a unique tapestry of traditions and experiences. As she strolled down the familiar sidewalk, Dionne couldn't help but feel a sense of belonging in this melting pot of a community. One sunny afternoon, Dionne decided to take a leisurely walk a few blocks from her house. As she passed by the colorful gardens and friendly faces, she paused to greet her neighbor, Barbara, an elderly woman who had become a dear friend over the years. "Hello, Barbara," Dionne said with a warm smile. "How are you doing today?" Barbara looked up from her gardening and her face lit up with delight. "Ah, Dionne. What a pleasant surprise. I'm doing just fine, my dear. How about you?" The two engaged in a friendly conversation, sharing updates about their lives and discussing the latest happenings in the neighborhood. Dionne always enjoyed these moments of connection with her neighbor, as it reminded her of the richness and diversity that surrounded her. Suddenly, a voice called out from across the street, interrupting their chat. "Dionne. Dionne. Can you come over and help me, please?" It was Mackenzie. She was walking home from the grocery store, her arms laden with shopping bags. She spotted Dionne out on the sidewalk. An idea began to take shape in Mackenzie's mind, a twisted plan that she was all too eager to set in motion. "Excuse me, Barbara," Dionne said apologetically. "I need to see what Mackenzie needs. I'll come back and visit with you soon, okay?" Barbara nodded understandingly. "Of course, my dear. Go on and lend a hand to your friend. I'll be here." Dionne hurried across the street to Mackenzie, curious to see how she could help. "Dionne," Mackenzie called out, her voice dripping with a false sweetness. "My dear, would you be so kind as to help me with these bags? I'm afraid I've got my hands full." Dionne, ever the polite and helpful young woman, immediately rushed to Mackenzie's aid. "Of course, Mrs. Mackenzie. Let me take those for you." Mackenzie smiled inwardly, her plan already in motion. "Thank you, dear. Let's head inside, shall we?" Once they were safely inside Mackenzie's home, the older woman quickly excused herself, leaving Dionne alone in the living room. Hurrying to her bedroom, Mackenzie picked up the phone and dialed the emergency number. 911, what's your emergency? The operator's voice crackled through the line. "There's a girl in my house right now, trying to rob me," Mackenzie cried, her voice trembling with false panic. "Please, you have to send the police immediately." Within minutes, the sound of sirens filled the air, and Mackenzie could hear the commotion outside as the police vehicle screeched to a halt in front of her home. She hurried to the front door, ready to greet the officers and point them in Dionne's direction. The officers burst through the door, their weapons drawn. "Where is the suspect?" one of them demanded. "In the living room, officers," Mackenzie said, her voice dripping with false concern. "She's been trying to steal from me." The police officers rushed into the living room, only to find a bewildered and terrified Dionne, who had no idea what was happening. What's going on here?" one of the officers asked, his brow furrowed in confusion. "This girl is a thief," Mackenzie cried, her eyes wild with a twisted sense of triumph. "I caught her red-handed, trying to steal from me." Dionne's eyes widened in horror, and she frantically tried to explain herself. "I was just helping Mrs. Mackenzie with her groceries. I swear, I didn't do anything wrong." "What's going on?" Dionne asked, her voice laced with confusion and concern. "Dionne, you're under arrest for breaking, entering and attempted robbery," one of the officers stated, his tone stern and unyielding. "What? No, that's not true," Dionne exclaimed, her eyes wide with disbelief. "Mackenzie asked me to help her carry some bags to her house. I was just trying to help." The officers, however, refused to listen to Dionne's explanation. They roughly handcuffed her and led her to the police car, ignoring her desperate pleas. "Please, you have to believe me," Dionne cried, her voice trembling with fear and frustration. "I didn't do anything wrong." But the officers remained unmoved, their minds made up by Mackenzie's false accusations. How could this have happened? She had done nothing wrong, and yet she was being treated like a criminal. Tears of frustration streamed down her face as she tried to make sense of the situation. Meanwhile, Dionne's mother, Olivia, was going about her routine when she noticed a commotion outside Mackenzie's home. Curious, she stepped outside to see what was happening, only to be met by a group of police officers escorting her 14-year-old daughter, Dionne, out of the house. Olivia's heart raced as she approached the scene, her mind filled with 1,000 questions. "What's going on?" she demanded, her voice laced with concern. "Why is my daughter being arrested?" One of the officers stepped forward, his expression somber. We're here because your daughter has been accused of attempting to rob her neighbor, Ms. Mackenzie." Olivia's eyes widened in disbelief. "Robbery? That can't be true. There must be some mistake." The officer shook his head. "I'm afraid not. Ms. Mackenzie claims she caught your daughter trying to break into her home and steal her valuables." "No, that's impossible," Olivia cried, her voice trembling. "Dionne would never do such a thing. She's a good girl. This must be some sort of misunderstanding." Dionne, her face flushed with shame and fear, spoke up. "Mom, I swear I didn't do anything wrong. Mackenzie just hates me for no reason, and she's trying to get me in trouble. Please subscribe." Olivia turned to the officers, her eyes pleading. "Please, you have to believe us. Dionne would never do something like this. Mackenzie has been our neighbor for years, and she's always seemed friendly. There must be some other explanation." The officers exchanged a glance, their expressions uncertain. "I understand your concern, but we have to follow protocol. We'll need to take your daughter in for questioning and further investigation." Olivia felt her heart sink. "But she's just a child. She doesn't deserve to be treated like a criminal. Please, can't we talk to Mackenzie and sort this out?" The officers shook their heads. "I'm sorry, but the decision has been made. We'll need to take your daughter with us for now." Olivia watched in anguish as Dionne was led away, her mind racing with a mixture of disbelief, anger, and fear. She knew her daughter was innocent, and she was determined to get to the bottom of this unjust accusation. Just as the police were about to bundle Dionne into the car, Barbara, a neighbor who lived across the street, rushed to the scene. She had heard Olivia's cries and knew she had to intervene. "Excuse me, officer," Barbara said, her voice trembling with urgency. "May I have a word with you?" One of the police officers turned to her, his expression stern. Barbara quickly explained that she had set up a security camera on her porch, and it had captured the entire incident. "The proof that you need is here," Barbara said, her eyes filled with determination. "Dionne is innocent." The officer listened intently as Barbara recounted what her camera had recorded. It showed Mackenzie, a 60-year-old white woman who lived next door, approaching Dionne and asking for her help. The two then walked together into Mackenzie's house, both smiling and seemingly friendly. "This is the evidence you need," Barbara insisted. Dionne was not breaking in or trying to rob anyone. Mackenzie had asked for her assistance, and they went inside willingly. The officer listened intently, his expression shifting from one of skepticism to one of realization. He quickly called for his partner, and they reviewed the footage from Barbara's camera. The proof was undeniable: Dionne was innocent. With a sigh of relief, the officers released Dionne and apologized for the misunderstanding. Olivia rushed to her daughter, embracing her tightly, tears of joy streaming down her face. "I knew you were innocent," my darling," Olivia said, her voice trembling with emotion. "Thank you, Barbara, for your quick thinking and for capturing the truth. Do you want to press charges against Mackenzie?" the police asked Olivia. Olivia, her heart heavy with the weight of the situation, paused for a moment. She knew that pressing charges could have serious consequences for Mackenzie, but she also understood the gravity of the false accusation and the impact it could have on her daughter. "No, I don't want to press charges," Olivia replied. "I just want this to be over, and for Mackenzie to understand the harm she has caused." The police officers turned to Mackenzie, their faces stern. "False accusations can lead to prison sentences and fines," they warned. "They can also have a long-lasting, negative impact on your career and reputation." Mackenzie, her face flushed with shame, nodded solemnly. "I'm so sorry," she said, her voice trembling. "I never meant for this to happen. I don't know what came over me." Dionne, who had been silent throughout the ordeal, finally spoke up. "I hate you, Mackenzie," she said, her voice surprisingly calm. "I hate you for falsely accusing me of a crime I never did. I will never trust you or anyone else ever again." Mackenzie nodded again, her eyes downcast. "I'm so sorry, Dionne. I hope you can forgive me," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I promise I won't be biased against black folks anymore." Olivia stepped forward, placing a hand on Mackenzie's shoulder. "I understand that you're remorseful, Mackenzie," she said. "But it's going to take time for us to rebuild that trust. I hope you'll use this experience to reflect on your biases and work to overcome them." The police officers, satisfied that the situation had been resolved, left the scene, leaving Mackenzie, Olivia, and Dionne to confront the aftermath of the incident. In the days and weeks that followed, Mackenzie struggled to come to terms with her actions. She knew that she had deeply wounded Dionne and her family, and she was filled with a sense of remorse that she had never experienced before. She began to examine her own biases and prejudices, and to understand the harm that they could cause. Slowly, Mackenzie started to make amends. She reached out to Dionne and Olivia, apologizing sincerely and offering to make reparations in any way she could. She also began to volunteer in the community, working to promote diversity and inclusion, and to educate others about the dangers of bias and discrimination. Over time, Mackenzie's efforts began to bear fruit. Dionne and Olivia, while still cautious, began to open up to her, and to see the genuine change in her character. The community, too, began to take notice of Mackenzie's transformation, and she was praised for her commitment to making amends and promoting a more just and equitable society. In the end, Mackenzie's journey was a difficult one, but it was also a testament to the power of redemption and the possibility of change. By confronting her own biases and taking responsibility for her actions, she was able to not only make amends, but to become a force for positive change in her community. Please subscribe. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe to help our channel grow.